Welcome to the Everyday Miracles podcast, where real life stories of hope and inspiration are shared. Every day, miracles are happening all around us, yet we rarely hear anything about them. Why is that? I'm Julie Hedenborg, and I've committed my time and energy to bring these stories to you, including some of my own personal experiences. My hope is that you'll be impacted the same way that I was. Join me in my journey to inspire change in a world that so desperately needs it. Hey, welcome back. This is Julie with Everyday Miracles podcast, and I'm thrilled to bring you this testimony today. I have Heather Strazza on the line. And hi, Heather. And she wrote to me through the podcast by email, and she has a beautiful testimony to share today with you. And it's just absolutely awesome. This is like a resurrection type of miracle. It shows the power of prayer. And I just can't wait to hear her tell the full story because I haven't heard all of it. So Heather, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So where would you like to start?
So I guess I do always like to throw in a little bit of just my history, just to kind of get to know me a little bit. I got saved when I was about 29. I decided to read the Bible on my own. I had a really traumatic salvation, and I just loved reading about the New Testament and all the amazing things God did. And I really did already watch people's videos about healing and all the miracles of God, because I just knew He was so able and so amazing. So I was on fire for God. This happened. I was driving to church on a Sunday morning, and it was early because I was in the choir. It was 7 a.m, and it was in January. And so in New Jersey, that is freezing cold. On the ride, the road froze. The cars around me lost control, and I ended up on the side of the road. And as you know, I called everybody. I called the cops. I called everything. And as I was sitting there, an SUV full speed hit the store. It hit me physically in the head. It knocked me into the other side of the car. It pushed the car up. And anyway, eventually a cop was driving down the road, and he saw me. He wasn't even the ones that I called. He saw me, and he had to pull the car apart to get me out of there. He said that I was non-responsive, and they had to resuscitate me. And my body temperature was down to 70 degrees. They said I lost 1.5 liters of blood at least. It was really bad. But thankfully, this total miracle cop just saw me really early, and they took me right away. So that was great. So in the hospital, they talked to my family, and my husband was there, and he made it to the hospital, and the chief of the I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it. The chief
Surgery?
I wrote it down somewhere. Chief of trauma said that I have severe traumatic brain injury. And then he says that the worst part is that actually there's brain flowing down to my brain stem, and it's tearing apart the brain stem. He says that it's most likely I won't make it. He said that it's so bad that within the 72 hours we'll kind of get an idea of if I'm even going to survive or not. They were saying that if I did survive, I would be like a vegetable, all these things. Mm-hmm. So that was the first, the first part of the story is what happened.
It had to be really hard for your family to hear that. Yeah.
Yes. So everybody comes to the hospital. This is Sunday, okay? So me and my husband served. So we told the people at church what happened. So the word spread so fast. It spread across the country. It was everybody stopped sermons. They had retreats that they prayed for me. Like there's people all over the world praying for me because I go to Hillsong. So it just went from state to state. That was really awesome. So there was a lot of prayer. My surgery, they removed a whole half of my skull. I was for preparation surgery and taking me out. It was about 12 hours until they saw me again. The doctor said that during the surgery that I had flatlined for 8 minutes. But they said when I came out that it was that I was stable, and they had me on all the different machines for breathing, for heart rate. They had me on full support, but I was completely non-responsive when I came back out. My pupils would not dilate. I would not respond in any way. So they really didn't think I was going to survive. But in this process, there was all these people that came to pray, all these people from church. My husband at the time, my father, they both just had this supernatural faith, feeling like God was telling them that I was going to be okay. And it might not have made sense to absolutely anybody in there, but for them, they just had this amazing faith. They just felt lifted. My dad did not cry. They did not even, nothing. They just stood, and I was in such a horrible state. It was, they had all the machines on me. I was nothing looked good about the situation. And they're encouraging other people that I was going to make it, that you're not going to lose your sister. You're not going to lose, your daughter. You're not going to lose your wife. My dad was around encouraging people that I was going to make it. It's pretty cool. So Pastor Carl even came and prayed for me.
Yeah.
The lead pastor came and prayed for me. The prayer leader prayed for me. They put their hands on me, and about 20 minutes later, my husband said that I pulled my hand out and I squeezed his hand, and he says it made him feel like the miracle is already happening. I already believe it. They prayed the specific prayer. They said, "No weapon formed against Heather shall prosper," and they said it with such a way that he never heard prayer before. Not that they were asking for it, but they were declaring that this is reality.
With authority.
With authority, that no weapon formed against Heather will prosper. And we thank you, God, that she is healed. We thank you, God, that she is going to wake up and be in perfect health. And so they had this supernatural authority with them. It was incredible. So the next morning, I did actually open my eyes. I was in a coma, okay? I did actually open my eyes, and my pupil did dilate. So they took me back in to check me, another MRI or whatever they do, and they came back out, and the doctor pulled my husband to the side and said, I don't know how to say this to you. I wrote it down because it was such an incredible thing to say. All of the damage that was done to Heather's brainstem is gone. She's not been in. My husband said, "Oh wow, she's been healed." And he said, "No, it's not that she was healed. In fact, it's like she never had injury before. There's no scar tissue. There's no blood. There's no swelling. There's no inflammation. There's no buildup. There's no trauma. There's no nothing. She is in perfect, healthy brainstem. She's a perfect, healthy brainstem." Yeah.
How fast did that happen?
The next morning they checked, and it was perfect. So I was still in a coma, and I was still, they still said all the things that she's not going to be able to recognize you. She probably, all these things that I'm probably not going to be able to do. I probably won't be able to move, and so then of course the faith started building. They saw this miraculous healing miracle, and so they're like, we're just going to stand firm, and we're not going to let any negative words come in this room. We're not going to say anything that receives any of this bad news. We're going to refuse to hear any of this, or I forget anything. Yeah, they're just like, no to anything. So they said that I'm going to be in a coma for at least a few months. They said, get used to this ICU. She's going to live here. this is going to be her home for at least a year, they said. They said, like, this is just, they gave a whole list. So the next day, what happened then? Okay, so the next day I was healed. And the day after that, I actually came out of the coma completely. Well, my eyes were opening. I couldn't speak yet because I had all these tubes in me for breathing. On the third day, I was in full 100% my own breathing. And
wow.
so what happened was they were going to remove it. I decided to remove it myself, which was not good because I damaged my throat.
Yeah, we nurses don't like that. We like you getting better, but just let us help you.
So I immediately came out of the coma. They said that she's not going to recognize the family, but I reckon I did things to let them, to communicate with them, like I said a couple little words here and there, but I did things that, like my sister, like I pinched her in the chin, and we've done that to each other before, so it was kind of their way of knowing I know who they are.
You're in there. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Another miracle is my hand. So in the accident, I landed when the car hit me, it also damaged my hand. I landed on my hand. But they didn't touch it they didn't mess with me or help me for the first couple of days because I'm at the ICU. They didn't really care that much about my hand. But they tell my husband, they're like, so there's two options. We're either just going to remove it, just full remove the hand because it's in such bad condition, or we can try, there's this other surgery where you just open it up and see if the swelling goes down or whatever, and just remove the areas that are dead.
So it was really bad.
Oh yes, it was completely, there was no blood flow at all. It was just, I forget all the words that they called it. Sorry about that.
Fasciotomy. Usually they do that when it's so tight. It's like a syndrome where it's not, the blood can't even perfuse because it's so swollen.
Fasciotomy is the word that I was looking for. So they ended up cutting it open, and they said, and people were saying, Heather's doing so good. If she has to lose her hand, so it's okay. Don't worry about it. And my no, that is not gonna happen. Everybody was praying for my hand. They were just like, she is not gonna lose that hand. And guess what? A day or two later, they went to see what they had to remove, and they said, wow, it's in perfect condition.
What?
Sewed it back together. They did not have to remove one thing. It was in perfect condition.
Wow. Do you have any nerve damage or anything from it?
So I have this big scar tissue where they cut it open. And it's got like a bunch of scar tissue in it, which is kind of like annoying. Yeah. But I have full function of my hand. So so anyway, they said they were going to have me in the ICU and in that hospital for a year. After almost 4 weeks, I was in the process of rehab, and they kicked me out of that hospital.
Oh my God.
Nothing more we could do. So they let me go, and I went into rehab. Thank God I went into rehab. I was almost too good to go to rehab, but they kind of tricked it a little bit to let me get in.
Wow.
They had me living in rehab. After it took me 2 weeks before they had me stand up for the first time. They actually had me stand up after 2 weeks, and the next day, with assistance, I walked, like 100 feet and back. Like it was just a total miracle that I could actually walk, and the whole right side of my body was numb because the damage was on the left side of my brain. So it's just like something that happened. So in rehab, I had to completely get function of my right hand, and I couldn't, it was like like there was no using my hand at all. But little by little, so I was only in rehab for another 5 weeks, and they let me go, and I went from home. I just came in twice a week or 3 times a week in rehab. So another awesome miracle was my reading. I completely forgot how to read. I didn't know what A, B, and C was. My vocabulary was down to like 2nd grade. Like my memory was terrible as well. But as I was taking the rehab class for reading, she said, when it came to after about a year, she said, Heather, nobody ever takes this class for a full year because they stop improving. and there's nothing more I could do. But she says, you're the first person, you're actually coming from, from knowing absolutely nothing to completely graduating, and I can just let you go because you know how to read now with no problem. So there were so many little stories like this about my healing. Things were happening miraculously. They were happening so fast. Everything in the hospital happened so fast. So did you want to hear about the other people in the ICU?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I just want to clarify, you kind of went through this, but you mentioned that the whole church service, Hillsong is huge,
Yes.
huge. And Carl Lentz and my pastor are friends, which I think is really cool. We've talked about that earlier, but Pastor Furtick has so much respect for him. And he did mention that he's relentless with his drive to connect with people, and for him to come to see you, I think is really amazing, because these guys have they can't do that for everybody. So it's special. But you also had the church stopped service around the world, and 100,000 people attend this church right now every week.
Yeah.
So think about that, is the power of prayer behind you. I mean, it's great to have your pastor when that can happen. They can't realistically do that all the time, but the volume of prayer, I think at one point you told me you had people lined up all the way outside through the hospital and praying for you, praying for everyone in the ICU. I love that part. So yes. And you mentioned in your testimony that other people started having miracles too that were getting prayed over. So please share that, because I don't know that part yet.
Yes. So it wasn't just me that was receiving it, but in the ICU, it's a place where there's room for 20 other rooms, and somebody was in every one of them, and their family was in that ICU area. So here is this giant group of people there for me, and they all had faith, and they were so positive and generous. They came with food, they came with just joy. And the woman that worked there for 18 years says she's not heard anybody ever laugh, ever, in that ICU. And this church was just bringing in so much joy. And all these other families started just receiving prayer, receiving food, receiving love, receiving joy. And it was just opening up. It was breaking down walls. There's people who are Muslims. There were people from all different situations. This was in a very horrible part of New Jersey. It was a very scary place to live. And so many people were shot. So many people had all these horrible situations that they were in at that moment. And their family was there in so much sorrow. But here this church brings in this amazing overflow of prayer and love. And it was just incredible. So I wrote one of them down. So there was a guy who was full of flesh eating bacteria, and he was about to get surgery. And of course, the family comes and asks for prayer, or his son, or the one person came and asked for prayer. And the next day when they went to do the surgery, they said, what did they say? There's absolutely, wait, hold on. He doesn't need the surgery. He doesn't have any more of an infection. So they just cleaned him up and sent him home the next day, just completely out of nowhere. There was
Wow.
shot in the chest several times. The family member was asking my husband for prayer. And the next day, they thought they were going to lose him completely. He was was he the one that was in the coma? Sorry, there's so many of these stories. They're all messed up.
No, take your time. I want to hear them. I'm sure other people do too.
So he shot in the chest multiple times. He was extremely close to death. And the family members were asking Orion for prayer. And the next day he miraculously came into good health, and they sent him home like within days. 18 out of 20 people were sent home healed. 18 out of 20 people. There was a person in a coma. They were just about to pull the plug. The next day they were going to pull the plug. They were asking for prayer, and they miraculously woke up, and they were hungry. They're like, give me McDonald's or something. It was just ridiculous. There was a whole family of 14 Muslims that all asked for prayer for their family member, and they all received Jesus for salvation. They all asked for a prayer of salvation.
Oh
the
my
whole
gosh.
Yes.
That's amazing.
There's so many more stories, but I don't have them all at the moment. But those are the few that I have. It's been about 5 years, so or I don't remember
Wow.
them all.
Well, that flesh-eating bacteria, just as a nurse, you develop a nose. You can actually identify things by the way they smell. But I used to take care of those patients, and we would have to mark every hour the amount of growth. Like it would grow so rapidly, and it's deadly, that stuff. And to
Yes,
that and for someone who doesn't understand that, like that blows my mind. Like that was a major problem for people trying to clear that up. So,
they were just
and
about to remove all that flesh out of
yeah,
the morning.
that's that. I mean, the people that work there had to be like, hallelujah. Were they just,
Actually, the really funny thing about that is the doctors themselves started nicknaming me Miracle in Bed Number 5. And doctors don't say stuff like that. They
oh
call
my
me Miracle in Bed
goodness.
Number 5. Because he said every time I come to you to tell you what she's going to not be able to do for the next weeks, months, or years, she does it the next day. So the doctor said, I'm just going to stop telling you what she can't do because she always proves me wrong.
Wow, this is amazing, Heather. So amazing. Your church must have really bonded through
It really
seeing all of this.
it brought so much. It made the church feel like a family together, like a family instead of just friends. It brought so many people together. It brought so much faith in prayer. It brought so much just kindness when there's just people were coming, playing music, praying, just they're just all coming together, and it's amazing. That yeah, maybe I was the one in the hospital or I was the one in the rehab. But them all being together, they were there for each other, even in their own, whatever's going on in their lives. Like they were just all there to be together, and they all were in agreement with what God says. And that just brought so much of this family vibe into our church. And it was the one in New Jersey was kind of new. So this really just lifted up the whole church. It was incredible. But still to this day, I have people, he still to this day has people from these families that were healed that contact him. And still to these days, I've had rehab people who all of a sudden show up at church and want to know Jesus because of them working with me and watching these miracles happen. When I came to visit the ICU a year ago, the nurses saw me and they just were like in complete shock. Everybody is in complete shock of just how great I'm doing, because they have seen what I went through and they know that this isn't natural. One of my own doctors, one of my own surgeons, actually saw me when I was in rehab. So I completely forgot how to play music. I completely forgot all these things. But in Kessler, in my rehab place, there was a piano there. So I spent a lot of time trying to relearn how to play. And one of my surgeons saw me playing the piano, and he came up to me and he just like lost it. He just started recording me. He's asking me all these questions. He was just so blown away by how amazing I was and how well I was doing. So it was really cool.
It's an amazing move of God, like in so many areas.
Yes, it really is. So many people got saved. People in my family, people in my husband's family, so many friends. Even my friend who was a doctor, when she found out what had happened to me, it made her start believing that God performs miracles. And it's just incredible that I love that stuff like this can show like living proof of how glorious, how amazing God really is. So yeah.
So how are you doing now? Like, do you have, you've had to go through a lot of rehab. It probably had to be a challenge to get through all that. It sounds like you breezed through it, but there had to be moments where it was tough. Like, do you still have limitations, or all that bone that was taken out, were they able to put plates there? Like, do you have pain?
Well, that's another cool miracle, is I thought they wouldn't be able to put it back together for a year. After 4 months, they put it all. They said it seemed like it was in perfect condition. They put it all back together, and they put even though my skull was fractured in 14 places, it was broken into 3 full pieces, and they they put it all back together, and they said, it was all the swelling was down, it was fine. The surgery went great, and I was able to restart life again. I actually went to church for the first time 9 weeks after the accident. Put those numbers together. It's insane. And I started
Oh,
after they put me all back together after the 4 months. I couldn't wait to get to choir. I wanted to stand and sing in choir again because one of my favorite things to do is to encourage other people. So I love sharing just the glory that I have with God, with other people, to feel lifted and feel like they can do the same thing.
yes, yes. You had that day in church. I mean, your whole church had to be just crying to see you there and
Oh yeah,
after everything.
say that when they see me up there in choir, they're just like, wow, God is so good. It's been almost 5 years and they still feel that way.
Oh, that's awesome, Heather. Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. There was something I was gonna talk about, but I forgot what it was. There was something you started asking me. Or you-
I was asking you, do you have any deficits now or any pain
Oh
or
yes,
struggles?
yes.
Yeah.
So the funny thing about them almost removing my hand is one of the things I started doing when I got home from rehab was my husband and friends were telling me to paint, and I didn't, I was like, why would I paint? Like, okay. I started painting and I immediately fell in love with it. I painted all day, every day. I just loved it so much. I loved I guess because of, all the brain damage and all this rebuilding and relearning, I also fell in love with nature, with people. That's another thing. People assume that when I was in rehab in the hospital that I was in all this pain and sorrow. Honestly, I was the happiest thing on earth. I had the joy of the Lord, and it made no sense, but I really had the joy of the Lord. I was in a great mood all the time. I just loved just every person that came to visit me. They said the first thing I would say was, how are you? What's new with you? Instead of like, which is funny to me. But that made me like wonder, like, I don't have any memory of when I passed away. I actually don't have any memory for about 2 weeks. But I'm sure I had a supernatural experience. I can't remember it, but man, I knew the Bible more than ever. I had all this amazing joy that made absolutely no sense. I just feel like I probably had some kind of cool supernatural experience with God. I'll remember it. Gotta pray for that.
Yeah, maybe your spirit was just, and kind of like living in it, you know.
Yeah. So I still do paint actually. I still love painting. Um, I have really small like issues, like just little things with memory and a little bit with conversation and like vocabulary, and it's really not that big of a deal. If you meet me, you probably couldn't tell.
No,
Ever had traumatic brain injury.
no, severe traumatic brain injury. I'm just amazed, and I know so many people are going to just be blessed to hear this testimony. And I would love to find a way to get it to the Hillsong folks and to get it to people that took care of you in the hospital. We got to trust God that He's going to send this where it needs to go. But I just want to ask you, for the people that listen that are skeptics, because I know at one point you said you were a skeptic too, and you were drawn naturally to the supernatural before you actually became a believer. What do you say to those people as far as like your takeaway after all of this?
Man, the biggest lesson I learned really is the love of God. Ugh, it's overwhelming. It makes me want to cry. Like, you never know how much He loves you. We'll never know because it's so much bigger than we could even imagine. He loves us all and He wants us all to be healed. I just want you to know that if something bad happens, don't imagine that He would ever want His bad things to happen. God does not have a will for anybody to be hurt and injured. We have an enemy, we have this loving Father, and He is the one who loves us, and He's always there for us. When we're in sorrow, He is crying with us. When we're in joy, He is smiling with us. And I just want you to know that God is that his love for us is all we need to survive. Like his love can get me through any battle. Any battle. His just knowing that he is there for me and his love for me really gives me strength. So that would be my little story. Does that make sense?
That's perfect. No, I think you're a shining example of that with multiple miracles for you, for other people, conversions, within the Muslim family that you met. And who knows how many staff members were touched and got to know Jesus. I mean, it's phenomenal. What happened to you is just really beautiful. So I just feel blessed and honored that I get to help you share it and celebrate what God has done. So is there anything else you want to add?
I can't really think.
It's okay if that's it. You gave everything.
A lot of people do always say, like, the argument is, stop thanking God, thank the doctors. And it's a pretty common response when I start telling people about all the miracles and everything. And I will definitely say that I had the most amazing doctors. It was another mini miracle. The hospital was so busy that none of the surgeons were even available to give me the surgery I needed. So they had to get the teachers in to give me the surgery. Mm-hmm. So I had the best of the best doctors. They did an amazing job. They did an amazing job. They are incredible, but they will tell you that what happened to me is nothing from what they did with their hands. It is true that what happened was a miracle, and there's only so much a human can do, and I have so much respect and love, and I'm so grateful for those doctors. I want everybody to know I'm so grateful for them, and they're incredible. But at the same time, I'm going to thank God for what God did. God is so good.
Amen, sister.
And I would still pray. I could even pray for a doctor to do an amazing job at what they do. But I
love that.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great that you mentioned that. I often feel, I have so much respect for physicians too. And sometimes I feel like I'm taking the glory from them, but I think you just hit the nail on the head there. When I interviewed the chaplain months back, I think it was January, he had this beautiful piece of art in his office, and it was a picture of the OR and physicians. And then Jesus Christ was right behind one of them, and he had his hands like with the surgeon's hands. Wow. And, even though the surgeons could do perfect work for what they can do, they can't make someone's brainstem just immediately lose inflammation. Like, you can't do some of that stuff. So I think that's beautiful the way you put that, and that it is something that we are blessed to have wonderful physicians in healthcare. So they're a blessing as well that God can use. So thank you so much. I am going to post some pictures on Facebook and the blog, and we just thank you guys for listening today. Please keep the miracles coming. There are many different routes. I don't even know where to start. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm reading everyone, and it's taking me a little time to get through them, but God is just that good. So I love getting through them all. So thank you for listening today, and God bless.